The night the king's secret was revealed, the whole village was troubled. I was there in the shadows, hiding behind the clay pots by the palace wall. It was late, and the air was filled with the scent of rain. I had snuck out of my father's hut to meet my friend Chidi, but what I saw changed everything. King Adewale stood in the palace courtyard, his face twisted with anger. Before him is a young woman kneeling down, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I recognized her as Amaka, the girl who always fetched water from the stream. She was holding a small boy, not more than 5 years old. "Tell me the truth, Amaka." King's voice boomed, echoing off the palace walls. "Who is this child?" Amaka's voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence of the night, his words were clear. "He is your son, my king, your blood." The villagers that gathered started murmuring. I could see the shock on their faces, the disbelief. King Adewale had always been a just and respected ruler. The idea that he could have fathered a child in secret was beyond their imagination. The king's eyes narrowed. "How dare you bring this lie to my palace?" "It is not a lie," Amaka insisted, her voice stronger now. "You know it is the truth. The night of the harvest festival, you promised me you would acknowledge our son." The king became even more angry. "You will leave this village at once. Take your bastard child and go." I felt shock and pity. The king's words were final, and I knew what that meant for Amaka and her son. They would be cast out, left to defend themselves in the wild. But before Amaka could respond, an old man stepped forward from the crowd. It was Chief Obinna, the king's oldest advisor. His voice was calm but firm. "My king, if this child is truly your blood, we must acknowledge him. The gods will not forgive us if we turn away from our own." Everywhere became silent. All eyes were on the king. I held my breath, waiting for his response. King Adewale looked at Chief Obinna, then at Amaka and the boy. His expression softened just for a moment, and I thought he might relent. But then he turned away, his voice cold. "I have no son, but the one my queen bore me. This child means nothing to me." With that, he walked away, leaving Amaka and the boy kneeling in the dust. I couldn't watch anymore. I slipped away into the night, my heart pounding. I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days following that night were filled with whispers. People spoke in low tones, afraid the king might hear. Amaka and her son were gone, banished to the forest. The village felt their absence like a missing heartbeat. I couldn't forget the memory of the king's cold eyes, nor the look of despair on Amaka's face. Life went on, but a shadow loomed over the village. Then, 2 months later, tragedy struck. Prince Ifeanyi, the king's son with the queen, fell ill. At first, it seemed like a simple fever, but it quickly grew worse. The village healer, Mama Nneka, tried every remedy she knew, but nothing worked. The boy's condition got worse, and soon he was bedridden, too weak to speak. The king was so worried. He spent hours by his son's side, his face lined with fear and exhaustion. Despite his best efforts, the boy's health continued to decline. One evening, as the sun set and the sky got a little dark, Chief Obinna approached the king. "My king," he said gently, "I believe the gods are punishing us. The boy's illness is a sign we must right the wrong we have done." The king looked at him, anguish in his eyes. "What's wrong, Obinna? What do the gods want from me?" Obinna delayed, then spoke softly. "We must bring Amaka and her son back. Your blood is out there suffering. The gods will not forgive us until we make amends." The king's face hardened for a moment, but then he looked at his son, lying pale and still, and the hardness melted away. He nodded slowly. "Find them and bring them back." A group of villagers was mobilized and sent out immediately to search for them. Days turned into weeks, but finally, Amaka and her son were found living in a small hut at the edge of the forest. They looked thin and weary, but alive. When they were brought back to the village, the atmosphere was tense. The king met them at the palace gate, his face a mask of regret and sorrow. "Amaka," he said quietly, "I was wrong. Please come back. My son, our son needs you." Amaka looked at him for a long moment, then at the boy who clung to her skirt. She nodded, and they followed the king into the palace. Despite their return, it was too late for Prince Efani. The fever had taken away too much from him, and he passed away quietly one night. With his father, the queen, and Amaka by his side, the village mourned deeply. The loss of a heavy burden on their hearts. The king was never the same after that. He ruled with a quieter, more reflective behavior. His previous hardness softened by grief and regret. He made sure Amaka and her son were well taken care of, treating the boy as his own. The village whispered that the gods had taught him a hard lesson, one he would never forget. And so, life went on in the village, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The king's illegitimate son grew up with the weight of his father's remorse and the hope that the future might bring forgiveness and healing to them all.